Hello guys and welcome back to this week's stream or videos. We are going to be today finishing getting the inking version or inking part done on this week's picture. And if you don't know what we're doing this week, just a second, I think we've got a little bit of lag, so let's just let that sort itself out. Okay, let's explain what I am. So if we got a little bit of movement there, I do apologize. I am live right now, guys, so if you want to leave me a comment, you can do. My name is Blut084, BLUT084, Art and Games. And today, like I said, we're going to be continuing on from yesterday, where we started doing a picture for Mermay. And Mermay is you're supposed to be doing something every single day, but I didn't have a sketchbook large enough to, enough pages in one of my sketchbooks to do a whole month of just mermaid pictures. I should have really thought about it. But someone did challenge me over on Instagram to start a picture for Mermay. And again, guys, I didn't let you down. Hopefully, I didn't let you down. Yeah, hopefully we've got everything everything here should be in this picture here. So we've got an octopus, which is there. We've got the ice, which is the scene. We've got dawn, which is obviously the time of day, which you can't see until I've shaded it and colored it in. We've got Disney, because that's the little mermaid there, but she's a little bit more of a futuristic Little Mermaid. She's like a cyborg punk sort of thing. She is wearing like a tank top, but you obviously can't see, and her hair has been shortened and taken back to sort of a shaved on one side, that kind of neon punk sort of look. And then we've got Dark, which Medusa, I could keep calling her Medusa, I still haven't found out what her name is, on the Little Mermaid, which is again back for the Disney. Obviously, I've changed the character, but what I've done is made her into a bit more of a futuristic thing. So she's an octopus still, which is what we need, an octopus. And sort of just put a face in. If you've ever seen the comic villain called Kang, no, that's the wrong word. The comic villain MODOK, which I heard about the other day. I heard more about. It might be coming into the MCU, but that's another video. If you're a fan of MCU, guys, check out the last 2 weeks. Definitely, I've had my go at my Endgame pictures, so definitely go and check those out. And if you want some more, I'll put another post up on Instagram to ask people what they want to see next. But there's the villain, and she's the dark. She's looking for the dark, looking for a torch up here, which is above the ice. There's an ice layer here, and she's like under the ice lake. And this is like a futuristic YouTube viewing base, should we call it? I don't know if I should keep it as a YouTube thing, but that's what I've sort of done here. And yeah, that's everything. Oh, and the treasure. The treasure here is, let's move the camera down again. This is the treasure here. If you do remember the Little Mermaid, Morgana, whatever, takes her voice away, and we'll be listening to the story of that in a moment, guys. It is an audiobook form, so we'll be listening to it in the background. There is going to be no visuals for this because I've just had enough trying to get things done with just one screen. So I'm going to be trying to use audiobooks once again. If you have a audiobook that you would like me to listen to, or if you have a request of a book that you'd like me to draw a picture for, again, let me know in the comment section. I'm live here every single day on YouTube, occasionally on Mixer, but every day and night over on Instagram. Let's get on with the next stage, which is inking, guys. We've already done the sketch, and that's what you can see here. Again, I did a little bit more last night in the late night tweaks. That again, I showed you what I did over on Instagram. But you can check out how I created this to start with. Again, I've got the gun there, which is futuristic gun, which has got everything in this list. I am now going to be inking, which means I'll be getting to play this back on. You'll be listening to the Little Mermaid, and you can also say hi in the comments. That's my phone. That's somebody on Instagram. Hi, how are you doing? Okay, leave your comments over on the thing if you can. If you can't, then definitely go over to Instagram. Again, my name is Blute084 Art and Games. Same name, different links. Let's get that playlist going. I'm going to start inking with my 0.7, fine line pen, my felt tip for thicker lines, and my extra thick lines I'll be using my General Sharpie. Keep watching, guys, and enjoy.
And sang before the prince and his royal parents. One sang better than all the others, and the prince clapped his hands and smiled at her. This was great sorrow to the little mermaid. She knew how much more sweetly she herself could sing once, and she thought, "Oh, if he could only know that! I have given away my voice forever to be with him." The slaves next performed some pretty fairy-like dances to the sound of beautiful music. Then the little mermaid raised her lovely white arms, stood on the tips of her toes, and glided over the floor, and danced as no one yet had been able to dance. At each moment her beauty became more revealed, and her expressive eyes appealed more directly to the heart than the songs of the slaves. Everyone was enchanted, especially the prince, who called her his little foundling, and she danced again quite readily to please him, though each time her foot touched the floor, it seemed as if she trod on sharp knives. The prince said she would remain with him always, and she received permission to sleep at his door on a velvet cushion. He had a page express made for her, that she might accompany him on horseback. They rode together through the sweet-scented woods, where the green boughs touched their shoulders, and the little birds sang among the fresh leaves. She climbed with the prince to the top of high mountains, and although her tender feet bled so that even her steps were marked, she only laughed and followed him till they could see the clouds beneath them looking like a flock of birds travelling to distant lands. While at the prince's palace, and when all the household were asleep, she would go and sit on the broad marble steps, for it eased her burning feet to bathe them in the cold sea water. And then she thought of all those below in the deep. Once, during the night, her sisters came up arm in arm, singing sorrowfully as they floated on the water. She beckoned to them, and then they recognized her and told her how she had grieved them. After that they came to the same place every night, and once she saw in the distance her old grandmother, who had not been to the surface of the sea for many years, and the old sea king, her father, with his crown on his head. They stretched out their hands towards her, but they did not venture so near the land as her sisters did. As the days passed, she loved the prince more fondly, and he loved her as he would love a little child. But it never came into his head to make her his wife. Yet unless he married her, she could not receive an immortal soul. And on the morning after his marriage with another, she would dissolve into the foam of the sea. "Do you not love me the best of them all?" the eyes of the little mermaid seemed to say, when he took her in his arms and kissed her fair forehead. "Yes, you are dear to me," said the prince, "for you have the best heart, and you are the most devoted to me. You are like a young maiden whom I once saw, but whom I shall never meet again. I was in a ship that was wrecked, and the waves cast me ashore near a holy temple, where several young maidens performed the service. The youngest of them found me on the shore and saved my life. I saw her but twice, and she is the only one in the world whom I could love. But you are like her, and you have almost driven her image out of my mind. She belongs to the holy temple, and my good fortune has sent you to me instead of her. and we will never part." "Ah, he knows not that it was I who saved his life," thought the little mermaid. "I carried him over the sea to the wood where the temple stands. I sat beneath the foam and watched till the human beings came to help him. I saw the pretty maiden that he loves better than he loves me." And the mermaid sighed deeply, but she could not shed tears. "He says the maiden belongs to the holy temple. Therefore she will never return to the world. They will meet no more while I am by his side and see him every day. I will take care of him, love him, and give up my life for his sake." Very soon it was said that the prince must marry, and that the beautiful daughter of a neighbouring king would be his wife, for a fine ship was being fitted out. Although the prince gave out that he merely intended to pay a visit to the king, it was generally supposed that he really went to see his daughter. A great company were to go with him. The little mermaid smiled and shook her head. "I must travel," he said to her. "I must see this beautiful princess. My parents desire it, but they will not oblige me to bring her home as my bride. I cannot love her. She is not like the beautiful maiden in the temple whom you resemble. If I were forced to choose a bride, I would rather choose you, my dumb foundling, with those expressive eyes." And then he kissed her rosy mouth, played with her long waving hair, and laid his head on her heart, while she dreamed of human happiness and an immortal soul. "You are not afraid of the sea, my dumb child," said he, as they stood on the deck of the noble ship which was to carry them to the country of the neighbouring king. And then he told her of the storm and of calm, of strange fishes in the deep beneath them, and of what the divers had seen there. And she smiled at his descriptions, for she knew better than anyone what wonders were at the bottom of the sea. In the moonlight, when all on board were asleep, except the man at the helm who was steering, she sat on the deck, gazing down through the clear water. She thought she could distinguish her father's castle, and upon it her aged grandmother, with a silver crown on her head, looking through the rushing tide at the keel of the vessel. Then her sisters came up on the waves, and gazed at her mournfully, wringing their white hands. She beckoned to them, and smiled, and wanted to tell them how happy and well off she was. But the cabin boy approached, and when her sisters dived down, he thought it was only the foam of the sea which he saw. The next morning the ship sailed into the harbour of a beautiful town belonging to the king, whom the prince was going to visit. The church bells were ringing, and from the high tower sounded the flourish of trumpets, and soldiers, with flying colours and glittering bayonets, lined the rocks through which they passed. Every day was a festival. Balls and entertainments followed one another. But the princess had not appeared yet. People said that she was being brought up and educated in a religious house, where she was learning every royal virtue. At last she came. Then the little mermaid, who was very anxious to see whether she was really beautiful, was obliged to acknowledge that she had never seen a more perfect vision of beauty. Her skin was delicately fair, and beneath her long dark eyelashes, her laughing blue eyes shone with truth and purity. "It was you," said the prince, "who saved my life when I lay dead on the beach." And he folded his blushing bride in his arms. "Oh, I am too happy," said he to the little mermaid. "My fondest hopes are all fulfilled. You will rejoice at my happiness, for your devotion to me is great and sincere." The little mermaid kissed his hand, and felt as if her heart were already broken. His wedding morning would bring death to her, and she would change into the foam of the sea. All the church bells rung, and the heralds rode about the town proclaiming the betrothal. Perfumed oil was burning in costly silver lamps on every altar. The priests waved the censers, while the bride and bridegroom joined their hands and received the blessing of the bishop. The little mermaid, dressed in silk and gold, held up the bride's train, but her ears heard nothing of the festive music, and her eyes saw not the holy ceremony. She thought of the night of death which was coming to her, and of all she had lost in the world. On the same evening the bride and bridegroom went on board ship. Cannons were roaring, flags waving, and in the centre of the ship a costly tent of purple and gold had been erected. It contained elegant couches for the reception of the bridal pair during the night. The ship, with swelling sails and a favourable wind, glided away smoothly and lightly over the calm sea. When it grew dark, a number of coloured lamps were lit, and the sailors danced merrily on the deck. The little mermaid could not help thinking of her first rising out of the sea, when she had seen similar festivities and joys. And she joined in the dance, poised herself in the air as a swallow when he pursues his prey, and all present cheered her with wonder. She had never danced so elegantly before. Her tender feet felt as if cut with sharp knives, but she cared not for it. A sharper pang had pierced through her heart. She knew this was the last evening she should ever see the prince, for whom she had forsaken her kindred and her home. She had given up her beautiful voice and suffered unheard of pain daily for him, while he knew nothing of it. This was the last evening that she would breathe the same air with him, or gaze on a starry sky and the deep sea. An eternal night, without a thought or a dream, awaited her. She had no soul, and now she could never win one. All was joy and gaiety on board ship, till long after midnight. She laughed and danced with the rest, while the thoughts of death were in her head. The prince kissed his beautiful bride, while she played with his raven hair, till they went arm in arm to rest in the splendid tent. They all became still on board the ship. The helmsman, alone awake, stood at the helm. The little mermaid leaned her white arms on the edge of the vessel, and looked towards the east for the first blush of morning. For that first ray of dawn would bring her death. She saw her sisters rising out of the flood. They were as pale as herself, but their long, beautiful hair waved no more in the wind, and had been cut off. "We have given our hair to the witch," said they, "to obtain help for you, that you may not die tonight. She has given us a knife. Here it is. See, it is very sharp. Before the sun rises, you must plunge it into the heart of the prince. When the warm blood falls upon your feet, they will grow together again and form into a fish's tail, and you will once more become a mermaid and return to us to live out your 300 years before you die and change into the salt sea foam. Haste then, he or you must die before sunrise. Our old grandmother mourns so for you that her white hair is falling off from sorrow, as ours fell under the witch's scissors. Kill the prince and come back. Hasten. Do you not see the first red streaks in the sky? In a few minutes the sun will rise, and you must die." And then they sighed deeply and mournfully and sank down beneath the waves. The little mermaid drew back the crimson curtain of the tent. and beheld the fair bride with her head resting on the prince's chest. She bent down and kissed his fair brow, then looked at the sky on which the rosy dawn grew brighter and brighter. Then she glanced at the sharp knife and again fixed her eyes on the prince.
Thank you for these comments. Yeah, I'll be continuing this tomorrow.
She was in his thoughts, and the knife.
But don't worry if you can't watch all of it. You can just hit the ding the bell.
Then she flung it
or come back later.
Away from her in the waves. The water turned red where it fell, and the drops that spurted up looked like blood. She cast one more lingering, half-fainting glance at the prince, and then threw herself from the ship into the sea, and thought her body was dissolving into foam. The sun rose above the waves, and his warm rays fell on the cold foam of the little mermaid, who did not feel as if she were dying. She saw the bright sun, and all around her floated hundreds of transparent, beautiful beings. She could see them through the white sails of the ship and the red clouds in the sky. Their speech was melodious, but too ethereal to be heard by mortal ears, as they were also unseen by mortal eyes. The little mermaid perceived that she had a body like theirs, and she continued to rise higher and higher out of the foam. "Where am I?" asked she, and her voice sounded ethereal, as the voice of those who were with her. No earthly music could imitate it. "Among the daughters of the air," answered one of them. "A mermaid has not an immortal soul, nor can she obtain one unless she wins the love of a human being. On the power of another hangs her eternal destiny. But the daughters of the air, although they do not possess an immortal
That's the
soul,
pen I'm using, guys.
can by their good deeds find one for themselves. We fly to warm countries and cool the sultry air that destroys mankind with the pestilence. We carry the perfume of the flowers to spread health and restoration. After we have striven for 300 years to all the good in our power, we receive an immortal soul and take part in the happiness of mankind. You, poor little mermaid, have tried with your whole heart to do as we are doing. You have suffered and endured and raised yourself to the spirit world by your good deeds. And now, by striving for 300 years in the same way, you may obtain an immortal soul." The little mermaid lifted her glorified eyes towards the sun, and felt them for the first time filling with tears. On the ship in which she had left the prince, there was life and noises. She saw him and his beautiful bride searching for her. Sorrowfully they gazed at the pearly foam, as if they knew she had thrown herself into the waves. Unseen she kissed the forehead of his bride and fanned the prince, and then mounted with the other children of the air to a rosy cloud that floated through the ether. "After 300 years, thus we shall float into the kingdom of heaven," said she. "And we may even get there sooner," whispered one of her companions. Where the lights were twinkling like hundreds of stars, to listen to the sounds of the music, the noise of carriages, and the voices of human beings. And then to hear the merry bells peal out from the church steeples. And because she could not go near to all those wonderful things, she longed for them more than ever. Oh, did not the younger sister listen eagerly to all these descriptions? And afterwards, when she stood at the open window, looking up through the dark blue water, she thought of the great city with all its bustle and noise, and even fancied she could hear the sound of the church bells down in the depths of the sea. When first the sisters had permission to rise to the surface, they were each delighted with the new and beautiful sights they saw. But now, as grown-up girls, they could go where they pleased, and they had become indifferent about it. They longed for their life under the surface of the water, and after a month had passed, they said it was much more beautiful down below, and pleasanter to be at home. Yet often, in the evening hours, the 5 sisters would twine their arms round each other and rise to the surface in a row. They had more beautiful voices than any human being could have, and before the approach of a storm, and when they expected a ship would be lost, they swam before the vessel, and they sang sweetly of the delights to be found in the depths of the sea, and begging the sailors not to fear if they sank to the bottom. But the sailors could not understand the song, and they took it for the howling of the storm. And these things were never to be beautiful for them. For if the ship sank, the men were drowned, and their dead bodies alone reached the palace of the Sea King. When the sisters rose arm in arm through the water in this way, their youngest sister would stand quite alone, looking after them, ready to cry, only that the mermaids have no tears, and therefore they suffer more. "Oh, were I but 15 years old," said she. "I know that I shall love the world up there, and all the people who live in it. At last she reached her 15th year. "Well, now you are grown up," said the old Queen Mother, her grandmother, "so you must let me dress you like your other sisters." And she placed a wreath of white lilies in her hair, and every flower leaf was half a pearl. Then the old lady ordered 8 great oysters to attach themselves to the tail of the princess to show her high rank. "But they hurt me so," said the little mermaid. "Pride must suffer pain," replied the old lady. Oh, how gladly she would have shaken off all this grandeur and laid aside the heavy wreath. The red flowers in her own garden would have suited her much better. But she could not help herself, so she said, "Farewell," and rose as lightly as a bubble to the surface of the water. The sun had just set as she raised her head above the waters, but the clouds were tinted with crimson and gold, and through the glimmering twilight beamed the evening star in all its beauty. The sea was calm, and the air mild and fresh. A large ship with 3 masts lay becalmed on the water, with only one sail set, for not a breeze stirred. and the sailors sat idle on deck or almost on the rigging. There was music and song on board, and as darkness came on, 100 coloured lanterns were lighted, as if the flags of all nations waved in the air. The little mermaid swam close to the cabin windows, and now and then, as the waves lifted her up, she could look in through clear glass window panes and see a number of well-dressed people within. Among them was a young prince, the most beautiful of all, with large black eyes. He was 16 years of age, and his birthday was being kept with much rejoicing. The sailors were dancing on deck, but when the prince came out of the cabin, more than 100 rockets rose in the air, making it as bright as day. The little mermaid was so startled, as if all the stars of heaven were falling around her. She had never seen such fireworks before. Great suns spurted fire about. Splendid fireflies flew into the blue air, and everything was reflected in the clear, calm sea beneath. The ship itself was so brightly illuminated that all the people and even the small rope could be distinctly and plainly seen. And how handsome the young prince looked as he pressed the hands of all present and smiled at them, while the music resounded through the clear night air. It was very late, yet the little mermaid could not take her eyes from the ship or from the beautiful prince. The coloured lanterns had been extinguished. No more rockets rose in the air, and the cannon had ceased firing. But the sea became restless, and a moaning, grumbling sound could be heard beneath the waves. Still, the little mermaid remained by the cabin window, rocking up and down on the water, which enabled her to look in. After a while, the sails were quickly unfurled, and the noble ship continued her passage. But soon the waves rose higher. Heavy clouds darkened the sky, and lightning appeared in the distance. A dreadful storm was approaching. Once more the sails were reefed, and the great ship pursued her flying course over the raging sea. The waves rose mountains high, as if they would have overtopped the mast. But the ship dived like a swan between them, and then rose again on her lofty, foaming crests. To the little mermaid, this appeared a pleasant sport, but not so to the sailors. At length, the ship groaned and creaked. Thick planks gave way under the lashing of the sea as it broke over the deck. The mainmast snapped asunder like a reed, and the ship lay over on her side, and the water rushed in. The little mermaid now perceived that the crew were in danger. Even she herself was obliged to be careful to avoid the beams and planks of the wreck which lay scattered on the water. At one moment it was so pitch dark that she could not see a single object. But a flash of lightning revealed the whole scene. She could see everyone who had been on board, except the prince. When the ship parted, she had seen him sink into the deep waves, and she was glad, for she thought he would now be with her. "You sorrow, my pretty princess. You want to get rid of your fish's tail, and to have two supports instead of it, like human beings on earth, so that the young prince may fall in love with you, and that you may have an immortal soul." And then the witch laughed so loudly and disgustingly that the toad and the snakes fell to the ground and lay there wriggling about. "You are but just in time," said the witch, "for after sunrise tomorrow I should not be able to help you till the end of another year. I will prepare a draught for you, with which you must swim to land tomorrow before sunrise, and sit down on the shore and drink it. Your tail then will disappear and shrink up into what mankind calls legs, and you will feel great pain, as if a sword were passing through you. But all who see you will say that you are the prettiest little human being they ever saw. You will still have the same floating gracefulness of movement, and no dancer will ever tread so lightly. But at every step you take, it will feel as if you were treading upon sharp knives, and that the blood must flow. If you will bear this, I will help you." "Yes, I will," said the little princess in a trembling voice, as she thought of the prince and the immortal soul. "But think again," said the witch. "For when once your shape has become like a human being, you can no more be a mermaid. You will never return through the water to your sisters or to your father's palace again. And if you do not win the love of the prince, so that he is willing to forget his father and mother for your sake, and to love with you with his whole soul, and allow the priest to join your hands that you may be man and wife, then you will never have an immortal soul. The first morning after he marries another, your heart will break, and you will become foam on the crest of the waves." "I will do it," said the little mermaid, and she became pale as death. "But I must be paid also," said the witch, "and it is not a trifle I ask. You have the sweetest voice of any who dwell here in the depths of the sea, and you believe that you will be able to charm the prince with it also. But this voice you must give to me. The best thing you possess will I have for the price of my draught. My own blood must be mixed with it, that it may be as sharp as a two-edged sword. But if you take away my voice," said the little mermaid, "what is left for me?" "Your beautiful form, your graceful walk, and your expressive eyes. Surely with these you can enchain a man's heart." "Well, have you lost your courage? Put out your little tongue that I may cut it off as payment. Then you..."
Okay, that's a bit harsh. I've actually noticed that that's restarted itself again. So you've got like the second half, and then the first half again. If you want to listen to the whole thing in one big thing, and you want to see how this is going on, guys, definitely go and check the last video. Or if you want a link to where this book is, the audiobook, then ask me in the comments section. We are live, but yeah, we've done everything that I need to do. I've gone over everything with my fine line 7.0 over 0.7, whatever. And I've used this one here for a bit of shading, as you saw in the top here. And use this one for really, really dark colors and to keep that straight edge to it. I am now going to rub out all of the construction lines, which was underneath, basically meaning all the pencil lines. That will reveal what is left for this picture here to be finished off and done, because there are a few details that I would like to add with just a pen. I'm going to get rid of all the construction lines, and then we'll go on a little bit more detail. I think I've got enough time to make some more detail here. So keep watching and keep listening. If you've got any comments, guys, let me know in that section there. Gentle over this one. Feels like page may rip. Yeah, they're a bit there. Sometimes when you use your ink pen, it will dig in, which is annoying, but not too annoying. I can't fix it afterwards. There you can see there, guys. Some of the pen hasn't actually took, so I'll have to go over it again, which isn't a problem. Again, okay. You can always tell where I put an extra bit of detail on, or I think, no, I want to change that. A bit harder. I forget that I can rub things out. But the more you rub out on these kind of pages of books, the less the paper works. It becomes really, really fragile. Rubbing all the construction lines here. Why am I tapping the rubber for? Tapping it as if I was going to go like that. Do you ever tap anything, guys? Because when I cut things up when I'm cooking food or whatever, cutting a bit of chicken or something like that, I'll tap the knife and then I'll get on with what I'm doing. I am getting rid of all the dark shading behind it, but that isn't to say I'm not going to put more back. What I might be able to do is use that pen, that Sharpie pen a moment ago, and go around this picture a little bit. It gives it more like a darker outer layer. This emphasizes that it's in the dark because that is on the list, and I'll show you again in a moment. What I've done, because I want to get rid of all of what previous shading. Oops, I nearly forgotten to put that in there. That's a good line. I want to keep that line, horizon line. Keep that like that. Dark. There we go. I'll give you a quick zoom in a minute as well, show you what's different. All these lines. So reveal the picture underneath. When I go to digitize as well, this comes in real handy. I don't want to keep. I want to keep all of. Get rid of all the lines. I don't want to keep them. Right, I'm going to dust this off. Give me a second. Not looking too bad. I don't think. What do you think? I'm going in a little bit more detail in places. But other than that, it's looking all right. I missed a piece up here. Now I've taken all the construction lines. Let's give you a zoom in and show you what I've done. Okay, so we had octopus, ice, dawn, Disney, future, dark, and treasure. Let's go through all of those before I give you a zoom in. We have got the octopus, which is there again. I will add a bit more detail on there in a moment. Then we've got the ice, which is the whole scene. You can tell, but these are ice mountains, something like that. Sheet of ice, which they're underneath. The characters here, they're underneath the sheet of ice. We've got the futuristic watchtower, that's the wrong, observing bay for YouTube. We've got this camera here, which are kind of keeping it futuristic. Again, the shape of it is meant to be futuristic, but as you can see, we've got a spaceship or a floating craft going that way for some reason, but that's just to show you it's futuristic. So again, we've got dawn with the sunlight. I will put a lot of shading here, and I'll put a whole lot more shading down here. And that is because we've got Disney for Little Mermaid again, guys. That is a Little Mermaid, but I've turned her into more of a darker, punky, sort of futuristic cyborg sort of character. And then we've got dark, which whole thing will be dark. It's a bit more of a dark future sort of scene that I'm trying to create. And treasure, which when I get into the digital stage, guys, this will be glowing. I'll try my very best with my ink pens, my felt tips, and all the other shading tools. I'll probably use a bit of pencil actually to shade that with. And yeah, that's all of the things that I think we've got in there. What do you think, guys? Do you reckon I've got my octopus, my ice, and my dawn, my Disney, my future, dark, and treasure, all in one picture? Let me know in the comment section. I'm going to carry on and put a few more details in so you can listen to a little bit more of that story. But guys, let me know what you think in the comment section. My name's Blute084 Art and Games. You can go over to Instagram, which is the same name, and leave a comment if you can't sign in on YouTube.
Shall have the powerful draft. It shall be, said the little mermaid. Then the witch placed her cauldron on the fire to prepare the magic draught. Cleanliness is a good thing, said she, scouring the vessels with snakes, which she had tied together in a large knot. Then she pricked herself in the breast and let the black blood drop into it. The steam that rose formed itself into such horrible shapes that no one could look at them without fear. Every moment the witch threw something else into the vessel, and when it began to boil, the sound was like the weeping of a crocodile. When at last the magic draught was ready, it looked like the clearest water. There it is for you, said the witch. Then she cut off the mermaid's tongue so that she became dumb and would never again speak or sing.
Yuck.
If the polypi should seize hold of you as you return through the wood, said the witch, throw over them a few drops of the potion and their fingers will turn into 1,000 pieces. But the little mermaid had no occasion to do this, for the polypi sprang back in terror when they caught sight of the glittering draught, which shone in her hand like a twinkling star. So she passed quickly through the wood and the marsh, and between the rushing whirlpools. She saw that in her father's palace the torches in the ballroom were extinguished, and all within asleep. But she did not venture to go into them, for now she was dumb and going to leave them forever. She felt as if her heart would break. She stole into the garden and took a flower from the flower beds of each of her sisters, kissed her hand 1,000 times towards the palace, and then rose up through the dark blue waters. The sun had not risen when she came in sight of the prince's palace and approached the beautiful marble steps, but the moon shone clear and bright. Then the little mermaid drank the magic draught and lay like one dead. When the sun rose and shone over the sea, she recovered and felt a sharp pain. But just before her stood the handsome young prince. He fixed his cold black eyes upon her so earnestly that she cast down her own, and then became aware that her fish tail was gone, and that she had as pretty a pair of white legs and tiny feet as any little maiden could have. But she had no clothes, so she wrapped herself in her long, thick hair. The prince asked her who she was, and where she came from, and she looked at him mildly and sorrowfully with her deep blue eyes, but she could not speak. Every step she took was as the witch had said it would be. She felt as if treading upon the points of needles or sharp knives, but she bore it willingly, and stepped as lightly by the prince's side as a soap bubble, so that he and all who saw her wondered at her graceful swaying movements. She was very soon arrayed in costly robes of silk and muslin, and was the most beautiful creature in the palace. But she was dumb, and could neither speak nor sing. Beautiful female slaves dressed in silk and gold stepped forward and sang before the prince and his royal parents. One sang better than all the others, and the prince clapped his hands and smiled at her. This was great sorrow to the little mermaid. She knew how much more sweetly she herself could sing once, and she thought, "Oh, if he could only know that! I have given away my voice forever to be with him." The slaves next performed some pretty fairy-like dances to the sound of beautiful music. The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen.
What?
Far out in the ocean,
Okay, we're just going to
where the water is as
starting
blue
again.
as the prettiest cornflower, and as clear as crystal, it is very, very deep. So deep indeed that no cable could fathom it. Many church steeples, piled one upon another, would not reach from the ground beneath to the surface of the water above. There dwell the Sea King and his subjects. We must not imagine that there is nothing at the bottom of the sea but bare yellow sand. No, indeed. The most unusual flowers and plants grow there, the leaves and stems of which are so delicate that the slightest movement of the water causes them to stir as if they had life. Fishes, both large and small, glide between the branches, as birds fly among the trees here upon the land. In the deepest spot of all stands the castle of the Sea King. Its walls are built of coral, and the long Gothic windows are of the clearest amber. The roof is formed of shells that open and close as the water flows among them. Their appearance is very beautiful, for in each lies a glittering pearl, which would be fit for the diadem of a queen. The Sea King's queen had died many years before, and his aged mother kept house for him. She was a very wise woman, and exceedingly proud of her high birth. On that account, she wore 12 oysters on her tail, while others, also of a high rank, were only allowed to wear 6. She was, however, deserving of very great praise, especially for her care of the little sea princesses, her granddaughters. They were 6 beautiful children, but the youngest was the prettiest of them all. Her skin was as clear and delicate as a rose leaf, and her eyes as blue as the deepest sea. But like all the others, she had no feet, and her body ended in a fishtail. All day long they played in the great halls of the castle, or among the living flowers that grew out of the walls. The large amber windows were open, and the fish swam in, just as the swallows might fly into our houses when we open the windows, except that the fish swam up to the princesses, ate out of their hands, and allowed themselves to be stroked. Outside the castle there was a beautiful garden in which grew bright red and dark blue flowers, and blossoms like flames of fire. The fruit glittered like gold, and the leaves and stems waved to and fro continually. The earth itself was the finest sand, but blue as the flame of burning sulphur. Over everything lay a peculiar blue radiance, as if it were surrounded by the air from above, through which the blue sky shone through, instead of the dark depths of the sea. In calm weather, the sun could be seen, looking like a purple flower, with the light streaming from within it. Each of the young princesses had a little plot of ground in the garden, where she might dig and plant as she pleased. One arranged her flower bed into the form of a whale. Another thought it better to make hers like the figure of a little mermaid. But that of the youngest was round like the sun, and contained flowers as red as his rays at sunset. She was a strange child, quiet and thoughtful, and while her sisters would be delighted with the wonderful things which they obtained from the wrecks of vessels, she cared for nothing but her pretty red flowers like the sun, except a beautiful marble statue. It was the representation of a handsome boy, carved out of pure white stone, which had fallen to the bottom of the sea from a wreck. She planted by the statue a rose-coloured weeping willow. It grew splendidly, and very soon hung its fresh branches over the statue, almost down to the blue sands. The shadow had a violent tint, and waved to and fro like the branches. It seemed as if the crown of the tree and the root were at play, and trying to kiss each other. Nothing gave her so much pleasure as to hear about the world above the sea. She made her old grandmother tell her all she knew of the ships and of the towns, the people and the animals. To her it seemed most wonderful and beautiful to hear that the flowers of the land should have fragrance, and not those below the sea, that the trees of the forest should be green, and that the fishes among the trees could sing so sweetly that it was quite a pleasure to hear them. Her grandmother called the little birds fishes, or she would not have understood her, for she had never seen birds. When you have reached your 15th year, said her grandmother, you will have permission to rise up out of the sea, to sit on the rocks in the moonlight, while the great ships are sailing by, and then you will see both forests and towns. In the following year, one of the sisters would be 15, but as each was a year younger than the other, the youngest would have to wait 5 years before her turn came to rise up from the bottom of the ocean and see the earth as we do. However, each promised to tell the others what she saw on their first visit and what she thought was the most beautiful. For their grandmother could not tell them enough. There were so many things in which they wanted information. None of them longed so much for her turn to come as the youngest, she who had the longest time to wait, and who was so quiet and thoughtful. Many nights she stood by the open window, looking up through the dark blue water and watching the fish as they splashed about with their fins and tails. She could see the moon and stars shining brightly, but through the water they looked larger than they do in our eyes. When something like a black cloud passed between her and them, she knew that it was either a whale swimming overhead or a ship full of human beings who never imagined that a pretty little mermaid was standing beneath them, holding her white hands towards the keel of their ship. As soon as the eldest was 15, she was allowed to rise to the surface of the ocean. When she came back,
I've ruined
she
it.
had hundreds of things to talk about. But
Right,
the most beautiful, she said, was to lie
Ow.
in the moonlight on a
let's get that pause because it's just repeated itself from yesterday. But still, you'll get a good idea of what you missed yesterday. If you want to see how I drew this from before the pen and you've only now joined me, guys, don't forget to check that video from yesterday. That is the sketching video. Today is the inking video because we're here Tuesday, because every Tuesday is an inking video, every Monday is the sketching video, every Wednesday is the coloring video, which is tomorrow, and that's where we'll be doing with this tomorrow, guys. We're going to be adding all the color, so we'll be using 2 different kinds of coloring methods, or maybe even 3. We've got Copic marker brush pens, as we know. They're a brush pen, and they are very good for fine lining. Also, we will be using felt tips, which I just showed you there. It gives a really, really good effect for shading. I didn't realize how good they were. Maybe I should keep these just for my shading purposes because I like to use Copic marker brush pens for fine lining things, but these come really, really well for putting all the shading in here. What do you think, guys? Let me know. Tomorrow we'll be coloring this one in, and tomorrow will be dawn. So we'll be using a dawny type thing up the top here, a darker down the bottom for the darkness here. Future, we've got that in with the robotic arm, which I still don't like. I want to put a little bit more in there, just to make it look less like an arm, like that and like that. Just because, so we've got the future. Also, as a video zoom back so I can actually show you all. Right, so we've got octopus, which is this monstrosity thing here. Ice, which is the scene itself. Dawn, which is the time of day, which we've got a little bit of dark light breaking through, but not too much because that's dawn. Disney for the Little Mermaid, but she's a future Little Mermaid fighting against the future Morgana. I think that's her name. I don't actually know. But yeah, she's futuristic. Got herself a weapon here. Got herself a metal arm. Also got a few scars and a new haircut. For the futuristic, and also for the future side of it, we've got a rocket ship or a spaceship or just a car, I suppose, if it's in the future. Up in the top here, we also got the bay where the YouTubers will be watching, and hopefully you are too. Don't forget to leave a like, guys, if you do, and tune in tomorrow because we've got some dark treasures to continue on with. Thanks for watching, guys. My name's been Blut084, BLUT084, Art and Games. Tune in for more colouring tomorrow, as that's the next stage. Click the links that will appear. Otherwise, thanks for watching and goodbye.